Hey folks, this is Clayton Collins, CEO at HW Media and your host for the Housing News Podcast at HousingWire. And here on the Housing News Podcast, we seek to explore all things housing, from home sales, financing, technology, and construction. With 2023 being a year where the key theme has been lack of inventory in very supply-constrained markets in many parts of our country, we've been exploring some alternative models to home construction on the Housing News Podcast. Today's guest is the co-founder and co-CEO of Aro Homes, Mr. Carl Gish. In this conversation with Carl, we have the opportunity to explore the interplay between sustainable housing in today's housing crisis. We also talk about how Aro seeks to bring sustainable, design-driven homes to market that will save more than 11 tons of CO2 annually per home. I hope you enjoy this conversation with Carl Gish, co-CEO and co-founder of Aro Homes.
We may have just gotten back from Gathering of Eagles, but we're not done with events for 2023 yet. This October, we're headed right back to Austin, Texas for HousingWire Annual, and we want to see you there. We've got a power-packed agenda with content such as our Women of Influence speakers, peak performer playbooks, CEO playbooks, and more to propel your company forward, as well as a bunch of networking events. Because this event is open to real estate executives, mortgage, title, and everyone in between, you really have the opportunity to network with people from all across the housing ecosystem. If you want to learn more about the event, or if you're already ready to get registered, head over to housingwire.com on the events tab and you can learn all about it. Not to mention, if you're an HW Plus member, you're going to get 50% off your ticket. So get registered for HW Plus and get registered for the event so we can see you out in Austin.
All right, Carl, welcome to Housing News. Thrilled to have you as a guest today.
Thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here.
So, Carl, Aro Homes really started making headlines, or at least in my arena, about almost a year ago when you launched or announced a $21 million Series A focused on building design-driven homes and more sustainable homes. I'm excited to hear, like, even before the Series A, though, can we go back to kind of the founding story, the mission, the vision, what you were trying to achieve at Aro?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started the journey I guess it's about 2.5 years ago. And the journey was really about looking at different businesses where there were still what we considered really big opportunities, big industries where there was just still massive opportunity for change or disruption. And our investors, Eric Schmidt's venture capital firm, Innovation Endeavors, that's what they tend to look at is trying to find business opportunities in areas where there's a potential for creating truly substantial change. And single family housing in the United States is arguably the biggest market there is. There's 86 million homes. It's something like $36 trillion in value as an asset class. And there's about 6 million homes bought and sold a year, as you and your audience are very familiar with, I'm sure. And if you stop and look at it objectively, it's an industry, single family homes I'm talking about, less commercial, that really hasn't seen much innovation or change or adoption of technology for decades. Single family homes are built the same way today as they were decades ago. And we just thought there was a real opportunity to bring sort of multifunctional, multidisciplinary approach, mainly around product, treating a home like a product, to this industry. And that's what my background is in. And my co-founder, Simon Bogue, he came from the automotive industry, and sort of building really well-designed, thoughtfully produced products to market is sort of what we spent a lot of our careers doing. And in a naive kind of way, we said, hey, wait a minute, there's this massive opportunity that's housing, and can we apply it here? And so we spent the better part of a year just talking to people, doing research, talking to the experts, trying to understand why nobody had sort of tackled it in the way that we were thinking about before. And we learned a lot along the way. And that's sort of the origin story for how we got to where we ended up seeking investment funds from innovation endeavors and others.
I definitely can associate and see the attraction to building in the housing industry. It's what we're trying to do here at HW Media, building at the intersection of media and data, the size, the scale, and probably most importantly, the impact of what housing has on our national economy here in the US is just phenomenal and really unrivaled when you look at the ability to impact a lot of people in a really large part of our economy. So see the attraction, and also see the attraction from the capital side of why Eric Schmidt's venture firm would be attracted to supporting this endeavor. I'm interested in going a little deeper on your background, Carl, as well as the background of your co-founder. So I was like kind of looking you up in advance of the conversation and saw the kind of deep history with innovators in technology and in fintech from Vero Money and Plenty, Affirm, eBay. And so it sounds like you're coming in with a very strong tech and financial services background with a complementary background from your co-founder. I'd love to kind of hear about how the two of you came together and your vision for how you tackle this very challenging problem together.
Yeah, you bet. So Simon, my co-founder, he spent his career in mostly in automotive, but also in early stage companies, technology driven companies. And we both had been advisors for Eric Schmidt's venture capital firm for several years, working with companies in the portfolio. I ended up working in full-time in some of those, as well as advising them. And the idea sort of incubated within this network of innovation endeavors, advisors, executives, one of the general partners. And we were both intrigued by it because we both, coming from different perspectives, Simon much more from manufacturing and operations perspective, myself more from a customer facing product general management perspective. Really sort of as the more and more we dug into it, the more we said, wow, this is just, there's something here, and why hasn't anybody done this? And that something here, one of the things we learned, which I wasn't aware of, even though I think of myself as relatively aware of environmental impacts and the like, is that 23% of global carbon emissions, global greenhouse carbon emissions, come from residential housing. That isn't commercial, that's just residential housing. And you can be certain that in the US, with the size of our homes per capita and our environment, that we're probably on the higher end of that sort of environmental impact per home. And so just looking at all the productivity that NAHB talks about, something like 30 to 40% of single family residential construction materials being wasted. And that's all the stuff in the dumpsters outside of a single family construction site, right? Because every home is a one-off. They talk about that in the industry, something which I hadn't heard that term before, but that every home is a prototype. And it coming from both Simon and I, coming from industries where you start with a prototype and then you continuously evolve and develop it, and continuous improvement, and build in lean manufacturing and other disciplines to drive efficiency and product improvement and the rest to go to market. It was sort of like a bit of a mind-blowing perception of what's really the experience, or the state of single-family housing construction. And that really was what led to just continued digging and understanding and learning.
And it sounds like it's where Simon's background in automotive may come in very, very handy on lean manufacturing techniques, where there's not 30 or 40% of hard materials wasted at the end of the day.
Exactly. And we're already seeing that. And it's not about automation, by the way. That may be a piece of it. One of the things we looked at was companies that had both been successful in this space, whether it's commercial or residential, or not, and what were the things that led them to be successful or not. And automation, if anything, and I'm probably going out on a limb here, but I'd say it was inversely correlated to success. A lot of companies have come into the construction space, famously Katerra, and spent a lot of money with the idea that we can solve this with automation without fully understanding the processes first. And that's something we're very focused on, which is it starts with just having a consistent process, understanding the process, taking waste out of that process, which is what lean manufacturing principles are fundamentally about. And then, if it makes sense, you can apply automation or other things. So, yeah, it's Simon's. Here's somebody who managed automotive plants that were pumping out hundreds of thousands of cars a year, and we were all very aligned. It's like, let's not introduce any automation because we don't know what automation to do yet.
And so if I'm understanding the Aro model correctly, you were doing the design of these more sustainable prototypes, but also manufacturing product, correct?
Yeah, we're essentially an end-to-end builder developer. We buy properties, end-of-life homes. The average home in the U.S. is 40 years old. Something like 20 million of them are over 60 years old. And in places that have had populations for the longest, those homes are old, inefficient, not designed the way for how people live today, et cetera. And the basically going in and buying up these old homes, putting a new home in as quickly and efficiently as possible, but not just any new home, a home that's carbon negative. So it's actually generating more energy than it uses. And it has an incredibly efficient sort of footprint, if you will, in terms of the envelope, in terms of energy usage, et cetera. And because of our approach, we have a line of sight to being able to do that in 90 to 120 days. So we'll take an end-of-life home, close on it, and have a new home with a certificate of occupancy in 90 to 120 days. Today, that process takes 18 months.
So where are you finding, do you have a geographic focus or a market type focus? I'm kind of not entirely sure if we're talking infill or suburban, like where are you finding success?
Exactly. It is infill. We're starting with infill.
Okay.
We think that's where there's the biggest opportunity. Most new home build, as you're aware, is greenfield, and it's well served by the multi-billion-dollar companies that are already in that space, the Lennars and Pulte's and KB Homes and the rest of them. And there isn't anybody at any scale doing this for infill, and that's where we're focused.
And so since we're taking a prototype model and not doing a semi-custom home in each scenario, do you need a certain amount of projects in a neighborhood or a city to take on or launch a development wave? Or like, how do you manage concentration versus like kind of complete one-off buy, demolish, build?
Yeah. So we have a sort of regional manufacturing / construction philosophy. So we have an asset light manufacturing construction plant based in Sacramento, and that's going to serve the Bay Area. It's our first plant. It's where we're setting up shop and learning. And so we're focused right now on the Bay Area, and we don't want to be transporting these volumetric homes hundreds of miles. Right now, Sacramento is about 100 miles from the Bay Area, which is very, very manageable. And each plant will be able to handle between 75 and 100 homes, the current configuration. And so as we scale, we'll continue to buy more properties in more geographies and start to expand the footprint or the product roadmap in terms of the variations in the home, the jurisdictions we can go into, et cetera.
That's so. And what's been the process for identifying kind of end of life properties? Are you working through auction sites or wholesalers? And then love to hear the other side of that too. Once you've acquired an asset, improved it, how are you selling?
Yeah. So we have developed some proprietary tech that allows us to ingest all the data that we can, all the publicly available data, whether that's tax records, MLS data, survey data, et cetera. And what we do is we build some algorithms to analyze that data to understand, hey, that's how we developed the first prototype, to say, hey, what design, what envelope, what elevations would meet a large percent of the lots that we might want to build in. We might want to build in them for a bunch of reasons. One is the value, the age J characteristics, the resale dynamics, all those things. And so we actually have a set of locations that we know we would want to build on. And then as those come on the market, we are then ready and able and already have an assessment of, oh, okay, yeah, we can build here, and this is how much we'd be willing to pay, et cetera. So we've actually built and are using data in a pretty robust way so far, and we'll continue to evolve that over time. And the interesting thing is that the more data we get, like a lot of data models, the better our learning will become, the better the data will become, because we'll be able to then, just like we can do today, is we can go back and say, hey, well, this property that sold a year ago, if we bought that, what would it be worth today? Like, we have so much data. There's so much data out there in this space that we can use it and back test our algorithms and our thinking, which is really exciting.
So at this stage, 2.5 years into the founding of the company and less than 12 months in from the big Series A, tell us about the progress. How many properties have been acquired? What's in pipeline right now, and what's made it all the way through to hopefully an owner who's living and raising a family in that home?
Yeah, that's exactly what we're focused on, is building homes that families will be thrilled to live in and excited about. That's ultimately what our biggest single metric that we're going to be using as a company is Net Promoter Score for the people who buy our homes. And so we actually got funding. It was about a year and a half ago now.
Okay.
It was January of 2022. And we're close to finishing our first home. It's in Mountain View. We're already building our second while the first one is being finished. And we've already purchased one or two others that we're quickly going to be converting into, starting the process. So the engine, we started this with the first home. We shipped the modules at the end of May, the volumetric pieces, and built the foundation right before that. And so the first one will be ready at the end of August for sale, and the second one in October, and the third one later this year, and the fourth one. And that time frame we're already seeing massive compression just because of the learning, right? Because we're doing essentially a very similar thing over and over again. Our subcontractors, our general contractors, our design teams, our procurement teams, they're all learning and accelerating already just on the second and third homes.
So what about the process of manufacturing these homes in the factory that you've developed in the Bay Area makes them more sustainable? And I'd love to hear also a little bit more about what's happening in factory and what happens on site, and how that comes together in the construction process that's in process right now.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we get a lot of questions about. So first off, let's start with the product design. So we started off with a design that was an amazing house to live in. We've partnered with a world-renowned architect. We haven't announced who that is yet, but we will be shortly. I'm sorry I can't.
Will that be coming with the first listing?
Yes, as a matter of fact. So I'm sorry I can't share it with you. Can't give you the scoop right now, but fantastic architect partners. And we started, like I said, with a design that reflects how people want to live today. It's your question about environmental impact. So we started with the goal of having a carbon negative home, a home that generates more energy than it uses, and not just doing that, right? Because you could just have a huge roof with lots of solar panels and generate energy. We care about the net impact, and so we're pretty choiceful about the materials that we use, how much material we use, the envelope of the house, the insulation of the house, the ingress and egress of air, et cetera. And it is a fully electric home. So it's got an electric stove, electric heater, heat pumps, high velocity air handlers. It has solar inverters, has battery walls. So it's pretty much, sort of just leading edge, if you will. But again, all stuff that's commercially available, people use this stuff all the time. It's just that in a lot of homes, for whatever reason, builders and homeowners, unless you're doing a custom home, don't end up going that extra mile in terms of the design and the systems choices. And so once we had that design, then we said, okay, how could we build as much of this as possible off-site? Because that's where you get tons of efficiencies. I mean, having people work in a indoor manufacturing facility setting allows for, working in inclement weather, much better measurements, much better QA controls, processes, et cetera. And so if you walk, when you, hopefully you will, walk through one of our homes, you would never know, or you look at it from the street, you'll never know that was built primarily off-site. And so what we do is we build the foundation, bring the modules in by truck, the sort of volumetric. They don't look like container-like modules. And then they're craned onto the pad, onto the foundation, and they're stitched and finished on site.
Interesting. Well, when you do the grand opening open house, if I can't make it personally, I'd love to have Mike Simonson, who's our president of Altos Research, who's based in the Bay Area, join to see this property. It sounds like it's going to be a really interesting one. What are the property characteristics that the consumer cares about? So like how big are we talking? San Francisco has been an expensive market on a national scale. Are we talking like luxury? Like how would you describe the property that you expect to come to market in October?
Yeah. So we're starting at the higher end of the market, partly because it's the Bay Area, which is just a more expensive market. And we also use data to decide what's the right configuration, what's the right elevations, what's the right layout of the home. And so it's a almost 3,000 square foot home. It's got 4 bedrooms and an office, 3 bathrooms, big open living, indoor, outdoor space, lots of light. It's pre-wired or pre-configured to have gray water reclamation in it, which is something very important in a lot of markets, more and more these days, to be able to conserve and reuse gray water. Can cut water usage on a property by half. It has a standing seam metal roof and it has solar on the roof, about 7 kilowatts. And we're using heat pumps, span panel for the electrical management. We'll have Tesla power walls as well. So it's as I said before, it's a very technology forward home. But again, none of this is bleeding edge technology. It's all stuff commercially available, et cetera. And again, with the architect we chose to partner with and chose to partner with us, they're somebody who's super well known for their attention to detail, but sight lines and the living environment, the feeling of the home, everything from, hey, what's the lighting? Now you can have diurnal systems that'll adjust lighting based on optimizing for humans' diurnal patterns. Like we're all wired actually to react to light subconsciously, and being able to integrate that kind of thing into a home in a way that's, if you will, accessible, because the more we do this, the less expensive the homes will end up being, and the more markets we can go into, we think is really exciting.
Yeah. So there aren't many venture-backed home builders out there. I know you're running a different model, but so like out the gate, like do unit economics work from the beginning, or is there a certain like scale level that you have to model toward for like the business to prove itself from a like scalability perspective?
Yeah, so the unit economics actually are really attractive, in part because the process is so efficient. Because we're essentially building a very similar home over and over again, and we're doing it in a plant, there's a lot of synergies from doing that. So we expect by home 3 to 5, the unit economics will be positive on a unit economic basis. So at that point, and because we don't have massive capital infrastructure in our plant or in automation, we'll quickly get to cash flow positive. We're projecting to be able to do that within the next 12 to 18 months. So we think it's actually a very, very attractive business. We know it is from a financial perspective. And there's some other aspects to our business that are also really interesting and attractive, particularly to like the lending community. One of them is that our duration of our projects is very short, right? So instead of being 18 to 24 months from when we buy a property to when we sell it and redevelop it, which inherently has a bunch of risk. Real estate cycles, generally, they can change in 12 to 18 months. They're not going to change much in 3 months. So we're insulated by a lot of that variability. And we can actually, on the flip side, optimize for understanding what those trends as we start to scale those market trends are, whether that's to hold properties longer as they, to go deep early as a market's going up, or to do the opposite when a market's in a downward trend. So that duration dynamic that we have in our business is very unusual in any real estate business, frankly, and particularly in single family infill.
Yeah, it definitely helps your access to capital as a builder. On the homeowner side, are there any special financing considerations that like the eventual buyer needs to take into account as they're buying this factory built home that sits on the luxury side, which is a really differentiated product?
Yeah, and actually there's a bunch of advantages relative to traditional new home build infill. One is that the quality and the build quality and the rest of it are going to be higher. We're looking at things like extended warranties, just like a car. Your warranty goes. You can pass the warranty to the next buyer. We're looking at being able to do that with our home, which we think is a big advantage. Really interesting. The second thing is the operating costs of the home are significantly less than, you're not paying any utility bill, basically, some water, but you also make money net on the electricity. So utility bill, the cost of ownership is much less. So theoretically, in practice, you can afford more home because your monthly nut is much smaller. And then thirdly, another advantage is just the maintenance and sort of the like relating to the product quality things, things like insurance and other dynamics where we think we're going to be able to play in that space, sort of post-sale services and both financial and otherwise, we think is actually be really exciting and benefit to our buyers.
Yeah. So Carl, like we zoom out for a second and think of kind of the overall factory built housing landscape. This is like access to housing inventory has been a big theme at HousingWire this year. Earlier this summer, I had the pleasure of interviewing Robbie Pratt, who's the CEO of Haven Park, on this podcast. And Haven Park strategy entirely different from what you're doing at Aro, but they are buying, improving, and operating kind of traditional mobile home or manufactured housing communities and running those. And in that conversation, kind of he gave me his lay of the land of like how like the factory built landscape looks. And I think we're diving today into an entirely different part of like what factory built could mean for housing. But as you launched this venture, I'm sure you did some like market mapping of like the history and like different segments of housing that is being built, not stick built, not on site. So I'd love to kind of hear how you think of like the overall factory built landscape, where Aro sits in that, and like, is there an opportunity for Aro to play in different components of this factory build or manufacturer world over the long haul, or is this a kind of a narrow focus?
That's a big question, and it's a great question because I think objectively, if you think about how we're going to solve collectively, how the United States, we're going to solve the housing shortages, the housing issues we have, there's going to be several different solutions and approaches. And the inefficiency, the time required, the waste generated by how stick-built single family is done, I would argue long-term probably isn't the answer. Will there always be room for that? Of course. There is. It's like we said, it's a massive, massive market and opportunity and problem as well. If you look at some countries, particularly some of the Nordic countries, where factory built, productionized housing is 20-30% plus of the home, single family and multifamily home building. We think that model makes a lot of sense, and there's no reason that it couldn't be similar in this country. And there's different kinds of factory built homes, right? There's the kind that were developed after World War II that have continued to be a big part, whether that's mobile homes or what have you. And then there's what we're doing, which is much more of sort of, if you will, the luxury home or higher end of the market. And we're working with world-class architects and using top of the line materials and fabrication and quality. And similar, I think automotive actually has some good analogies here if you think about it. Like the best cars are the ones built in factories. Yes, you can get a custom car, but I'm not sure I'd want the warranty. I'm not sure what kind of warranty you'll get on a custom built car. And there's a reason for that, right? It just, you're able to invest, you're able to do the thoughtfulness on a design when you're doing that design over and over again and building it over and over again in a much different way than when it's a one-off, when it's a prototype. And those advantages, and again, we're in the early days of this, right? We see eventually being able to go into multifamily, less expensive, more affordable housing, and we will be successful. And depending on how successful we are, we may be a meaningful part of the market. But even if we're wildly successful, we will be a tiny part of the market and the solution. So one of the things we think about actually all the time is, hey, if we can, for us, 5-10 years from now, if we can help move the needle on the industry, like show what's possible, inspire or inform people to do similar or things that build off of what we've done, we'll be incredibly grateful for that opportunity, right? Because no one person's no one company, no one person, no one approach is going to solve this.
Yeah, and you're operating in a time and in a intersection of multiple tailwinds. So like we have this national inventory shortage, which our lead analyst at HousingWire, Logan Mohtashami, continuously reminds us that we're savagely unhealthy, and he's primarily pointing at inventory and affordability issues. We're also operating at a time when there is some state, local, and national regulatory spotlights on environmental sustainability, and that's another tailwind for Aro. And there's also the consumer interest in being more environmentally friendly. And so as you think about like those multiple tailwinds, how do you like market the product in market? Like, are people going to be proud to own an Aro home, or like how does the homeowner eventually feel about the four walls that they call home?
Yeah, that's something we're very excited about finding out.
Yeah.
The best proxy we've had so far is our realtor partners, who are arguably the ones who know the market better than anybody, because they talk to buyers and sellers. They work with them day in, day out, and they hear what they like and what they don't like about the homes they buy, the homes they want to buy, et cetera. And the feedback we've gotten from them so far, and they've actually helped with some of the nuances of our design and layout, has been really, really strong. So using the data and the inputs we've gotten so far, we're very confident that the first families who live in our homes will be really, really happy and satisfied. And as I mentioned, net promoter score will be our single most important metric. How likely are those people to tell their friends and families that they should run out and buy an Aro home? If only it was that simple. But that's ultimately, what we're going to do. And being able to walk through the house with that family, that home, with them and with our designers and engineers, and say, hey, tell us what you like most about this home. Tell us what you use most. Tell us what we could have done differently or better for you. Like, we can do that and take that learning and then build it into the next rev of our design. And that's again, that's that sort of productization of housing philosophy that we're trying to develop and bring to market. So we'll know in September, and we'd love to have a follow-up, and who knows, maybe you can get the homeowner on one of your podcasts and see what they
Yeah,
think.
100%. We'll look into it. So as we kind of bring our conversation to a close, Carl, we know that building a business is challenging, and even more challenging when you're creating a category. So as you look forward to the next 3 months before you bring this first property to market, and maybe look out another 3 years, what are the big hurdles and chasms that you're like most concerned about crossing? Like, what has to get done for this venture and the business to be a win?
Yeah, so we're very excited and optimistic, in large part because the things we thought were going to be challenges have mostly been challenges. There haven't been a ton of surprises. And some of the things that we thought were going to be real challenges, for instance, working with PG&E, famously difficult to work with in California, we've been able to find solutions with the local regulators, the electric companies, and other people. So we've actually, some of the challenges we anticipated haven't been as significant as we were expecting. And there's other things that we did anticipated being easier than they are, as is normal with any early stage enterprise. The biggest challenge for us is just basic execution. We know we have a sound strategy. We know there is demand for our product. We know there's massive efficiencies to be generated in how things are done today and relative how we're doing it already. We're knee deep in opportunity, frankly. And so building a muscle to execute consistently and well. One of our values internally is this idea of continuous improvement and raising the bar consistently. And that's something we all take very seriously. And the beautiful thing about this industry is we have a lifetime worth of opportunity because it's so big, because it affects so many parts of the economy and people's lives. It's just massive opportunity, and it will come down to as many things, but execution. So we have no doubt about, market fit, market size. The market size even our small slice is enormous. So we think that over the next 2 or 3 years, that's what we're going to be focused on, is proving out our model, scaling it, building in those efficiencies, making it really attractive for investors and for consumers. And right now, knock on wood, we don't see anything that is sort of insurmountable in any way, or major headwinds.
Well, the numbers we've seen from home builders so far in 2023 have been pretty positive. So you're surrounded with a pretty nice comp set of folks that are finding margin and finding growth in this otherwise challenging housing market. Carl, thank you so much for joining me today. Really interesting to learn more about what you and your team are building at Aro, and I'm excited to see the first few homes come to market later in 2023.
Thanks so much. Really excited to be able to share what we're doing.